The perfect morning shatters. The June sunlight streamed through the windows of the Grand Meridian Hotel, casting golden rays across the marble floors. Cassandra Blake stood before the full-length mirror in her bridal suite, her fingers trembling slightly as she adjusted the delicate lace veil that cascaded down her back. The ivory wedding gown hugged her figure perfectly, each crystal bead catching the light like tiny stars. At 27 years old, this was supposed to be the happiest day of her life. Cassie had waited for this moment through 4 years of dating Trevor Ashford. She had saved herself for marriage, believing in the fairness of old-fashioned romance and commitment. Trevor had always supported this decision, telling her she was special, that some things were worth waiting for. His patience had seemed like proof of his love. Her mother, Margaret, had left 30 minutes earlier to check on the flower arrangements at the church. The bridesmaids were downstairs having breakfast. Cassie found herself alone, which gave her a moment to breathe and center herself before the ceremony. 200 guests would be arriving at St. Catherine's Church within the hour. Everything was planned to perfection. Then she remembered the something blue tradition. Her grandmother's sapphire bracelet was still in the hotel safe downstairs. Cassie glanced at the clock and decided she had enough time to retrieve it. She gathered the flowing train of her dress and stepped into the hallway, the heavy silk rustling with each movement. The unthinkable truth, the executive floor of the hotel was quiet at this early hour. Most guests were either sleeping or preparing for the day. Cassie's heels clicked softly on the polished floor as she walked toward the elevator. She passed the honeymoon suite where she and Trevor would spend their first night as husband and wife. The door was slightly ajar. Strange, she thought. The hotel staff were usually so careful about security. Cassie approached the door, intending to close it properly. That was when she heard the sounds. Low moans, breathless whispers, the unmistakable rhythm of intimacy. Her hand froze on the door handle. Her heart began to pound so loudly she could hear it in her ears. Logic told her to walk away. Every instinct screamed that she did not want to see what was happening behind that door. But her hand, operating independently from her rational mind, pushed the door open wider. The scene that unfolded before her eyes was worse than any nightmare she could have imagined. Trevor was there, his muscular body moving with desperate urgency. But the woman beneath him was not some random stranger. It was Natalie Pierce, her maid of honor, her best friend since they were 8 years old and shared secrets at summer camp. The woman who had helped her choose this very wedding dress. The person who had held her hand through her mother's cancer scare too. Years ago, Natalie's red hair was spread across the white pillows like spilled wine. Her eyes were closed in pleasure, her mouth open as she gasped Trevor's name. Trevor himself was completely lost in the moment, his hands gripping Natalie's hips with a possessiveness that made Cassie's stomach turn. This was not a first-time encounter. The comfort and familiarity between them told a story of repeated betrayals. The escape Cassie must have made a sound, though she was not aware of it. Trevor's head snapped toward the door. His eyes widened in horror. For a split second, nobody moved. Then everything exploded into chaos at once. Trevor scrambled off the bed, grabbing for a sheet to cover himself. Natalie sat up, her face cycling through shock, guilt, and something that looked almost like relief at being caught. "Cassie, wait," Trevor began, his voice hoarse. "This is not what it looks like." The absurdity of that statement broke through Cassie's paralysis. She let out a sound that was half laugh, half sob. "Not what it looks like?" Her voice sounded foreign to her own ears. "What exactly should it look like when I find my fiancés having sex with my best friend in our honeymoon suite 2 hours before our wedding?" Natalie wrapped the sheet around herself, her eyes filling with tears. "Cassie, please, you have to understand. We never meant for this to happen." "It just do not," Cassie interrupted, her voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. "Do not you dare tell me this just happened? How long?" She looked between them, these two people she had trusted most in the world. "How long have you been doing this?" The guilty silence that followed was answer enough. This was not a recent mistake. This was not a moment of weakness. This was a sustained betrayal that had been happening right under her nose while she planned a wedding and dreamed of her future. Trevor took a step toward her, his hand outstretched. "Cassie, I love you. You have to believe that. Natalie and I, we have this physical thing, but it does not mean anything. You are the one I want to marry. You are the one I want to build a life with." The words hit Cassie like physical blows. He thought this explanation would help. He actually believed he could separate love from the physical betrayal, as if they existed in different universes, as if the virginity she had carefully preserved for him meant nothing, as if the friendship she had treasured for nearly 20 years could be dismissed as meaningless. A stranger's intervention, Cassie turned and ran. The wedding dress made it difficult, but adrenaline gave her strength. She heard Trevor calling after her, heard Natalie crying, but she did not stop. She could not stop. If she stopped, she would shatter into a million pieces right there in that cursed hallway. She made it to the elevator, stabbing the button repeatedly until the doors opened. Inside, she collapsed against the wall, gasping for air. The reflection in the elevator's mirror showed a bride with smeared makeup and wild eyes. She looked like a ghost. The lobby was busy with hotel guests and early arriving wedding attendees. People stared as Cassie rushed through in her elaborate gown, but she did not care. She pushed through the revolving doors and found herself on the busy street. A taxi was dropping off passengers at the hotel entrance. Without thinking, Cassie climbed in. "Where to, miss?" the driver asked, his eyes wide at the sight of a distraught bride in his back seat. "Anywhere," Cassie managed. "Just drive, please." The driver, perhaps sensing this was not the time for questions, pulled away from the curb. They drove through the city streets while Cassie tried to process what had just happened. Her phone buzzed insistently in her small clutch purse. Trevor, Natalie, her mother. Messages and calls pouring in. She turned the phone off. 20 minutes later, a taxi stopped outside the Sapphire Room, an exclusive bar in the financial district. It was barely noon, but Cassie needed somewhere quiet to think. She paid the driver with the emergency credit card she always kept in her purse and walked into the elegant establishment. The bar was nearly empty at this hour. Dark wood panels lined the walls, and soft jazz played from hidden speakers. The bartender, a silver-haired man with kind eyes, looked up as she entered. If he was surprised to see a bride walking into his bar at lunchtime, he hid it well. "What can I get you?" he asked simply. "The strongest drink you have," Cassie replied, climbing onto a bar stool with some difficulty given her dress. "Actually make it two," he nodded, and began preparing her drinks. Cassie sat there, staring at her reflection in the mirror behind the bar. The beautiful bride mocked her. All that preparation, all those dreams, all that waiting for nothing. She had been a fool. A romantic, naive fool who believed in loyalty and love and promises. An unexpected proposal. That dress must have cost a fortune, a deep voice said from behind her. Seems a shame to waste it drinking alone in a bar. Cassie turned to find a man settling onto the bar stool 2 seats away from her. He was tall, probably in his early 30s, with dark hair swept back from a strong face. He wore an expensive charcoal suit that fit him perfectly, and his gray eyes studied her with open curiosity. There was something commanding about his presence, an air of confidence that came from being accustomed to success. Cassie asked, though something about his face seemed vaguely familiar. "Dominic Kane," he introduced himself, extending a hand. "And unless I am very much mistaken, you are supposed to be marrying Trevor Ashford in about an hour and a half." The name clicked into place. Dominic Kane, the self-made real estate developer who had built his empire from nothing. Trevor talked about him constantly, always with an edge of resentment in his voice. Dominic had beaten Trevor out of several major property deals over the past 2 years. Trevor called him ruthless, cunning, and vindictive. Looking at the man now, Cassie saw calculation in those gray eyes. "What do you want?" she asked tiredly. She did not have the energy for whatever game this was. Dominic signaled the bartender for a drink of his own before answering. "I want to know why Trevor Ashford's bride is drinking alone in a bar instead of walking down the aisle. Call it curiosity." He paused, then added more quietly, "or call it an opportunity." Something in his tone made Cassie look at him more carefully. "An opportunity for what?" "For both of us to get what we want," Dominic replied. His drink arrived, and he took a slow sip before continuing. I have been watching Trevor Ashford for years. He is everything I despise in the business world. Born into wealth, handed opportunities he never earned, and completely without honor or integrity. He has stolen clients from me, spread lies about my business practices, and cost me millions in lost deals.
And what does that have to do with me? Cassie asked, though she was beginning to understand where this might be going. Dominic turned to face her fully. I want revenge. The kind of revenge that will humiliate him publicly and destroy his reputation in our social circles. And you, he gestured to her wedding dress, you appear to want the same thing, though I can only guess at your reasons. Cassie found herself telling him everything. Perhaps it was the shock, or the alcohol starting to hit her empty stomach, or simply the relief of talking to someone who was not involved in the mess of her life. She told him about finding Trevor and Natalie together, about the years of saving herself for a marriage that was based on lies, about feeling like the biggest fool in the world. Dominic listened without interrupting. When she finished, he sat quietly for a moment, his finger tracing the rim of his glass. Then he said something that changed everything. Marry me instead. Cassie laughed, though it came out slightly hysterical. What? Marry me, Dominic repeated calmly. Today. Now. We go to the courthouse, get a license, and tie the knot before Trevor even realizes you are not coming to the church. Then we show up at society events together, we let the gossip columns have a field day with the scandal, and we watch Trevor's world crumble. That is insane, Cassie protested, but her heart was racing. I do not even know you. True, Dominic acknowledged. But you know Trevor, and look where that got you. At least with me, everything is honest and upfront. This would be a business arrangement with clear terms. 1 year of marriage. Public appearances as needed. After that, we divorce amicably, and I set you up with enough money to start your interior design firm without needing clients from Trevor's circle. Cassie's mind reeled. This could not be happening. People did not actually do things like this outside of movies. But as she looked at Dominic's serious face, she realized he was completely genuine in his offer. What do you get out of it? She asked. Besides revenge? That is enough, Dominic said simply. Trevor has been a thorn in my side for too long. This will crush him in ways that business deals never could. His fiancée leaving him at the altar for his biggest rival? The society pages will never let him live it down. Cassie thought about Trevor finding her gone. She thought about the humiliation of explaining to 200 wedding guests what had happened. She thought about going back to her apartment alone, starting over with nothing but broken dreams and shattered trust. Then she thought about how it would feel to walk into a room on Dominic Kane's arm, to show Trevor and Natalie that they had not destroyed her. 1 year? She asked. 1 year, Dominic confirmed. I will have my lawyer draw up a contract with all the terms clearly stated. You will have your own legal representation review it before you sign anything. Everything above board and legal. And after the year? You walk away with $500,000 and connections that will ensure your business thrives. I walk away with the satisfaction of watching Trevor Ashford squirm. Dominic extended his hand again. Do we have a deal? Cassie looked at his hand for a long moment. This was crazy. This was impulsive and reckless and completely unlike her careful, planned-out life. But that careful life had led her to be betrayed by the two people she trusted most. Maybe it was time to try something different. Maybe it was time to be the person who made shocking decisions instead of the person things happened to. She reached out and shook his hand. We have a deal. Dominic smiled, and Cassie noticed for the first time that he was actually quite handsome when he was not looking calculating. Excellent. Finish your drink. We have a wedding to get to. Ours. A wedding like no other. The courthouse was nothing like the grand church wedding Cassie had been preparing for all morning. No flowers adorned the walls, no string quartet played romantic melodies, no guests filled the pews with anticipation. Instead, fluorescent lights hummed overhead, and the smell of old paper and furniture polish filled the air. Cassie stood in the stark hallway beside Dominic Kane, still wearing her elaborate wedding gown, feeling like she had stepped into some bizarre alternate reality. "You are absolutely certain about this?" Dominic asked, studying her face carefully. "Once we do this, there is no going back. The story will be everywhere by tonight." Cassie pulled out her phone and turned it back on. 63 missed calls. Over 100 text messages. The screen lit up with notifications from Trevor, Natalie, her mother, bridesmaids, relatives, and friends, all demanding to know where she was. The wedding ceremony time had come and gone 15 minutes ago. She could imagine the chaos at the church, the whispers spreading through the pews, Trevor's face red with anger or perhaps embarrassment. "I am certain," she said firmly, turning the phone off again. "Let us do this." The ceremony itself was surprisingly quick. A tired-looking clerk processed their paperwork with the efficient boredom of someone who had done this thousands of times. She barely glanced at Cassie's wedding dress, probably assuming they were just an eccentric couple. 2 courthouse employees were pulled in to serve as witnesses. They stood awkwardly to the side, clearly wanting to be anywhere else. The judge who performed the ceremony was a small woman with gray hair pulled back in a tight bun. She looked over her reading glasses at them with an expression that suggested she had seen it all and was not impressed by any of it. "Do you, Dominic Alexander Kane, take this woman to be your lawfully wedded wife?" "I do," Dominic said clearly, his voice steady and sure. "Do you, Cassandra Marie Blake, take this man to be your lawfully wedded husband?" Cassie took a breath. This was it. The moment that would change everything. She thought about Trevor, about the life she had planned, about the naive girl she had been just hours ago. That girl was gone. In her place stood someone new, someone stronger, someone willing to take control of her own destiny even if it meant doing something completely reckless. "I do," she said. "By the power vested in me by the state, I now pronounce you husband and wife. You may kiss the bride if you wish." Dominic turned to Cassie, a question in his eyes. She nodded slightly. He leaned in and pressed a brief, chaste kiss to her lips. It was nothing like the passionate kisses she had shared with Trevor, nothing like the romantic first kiss she had imagined for her wedding day. It was a formality, a seal on a contract. Yet somehow, standing there in that sterile courthouse with this virtual stranger, Cassie felt more in control than she had in years. They signed the papers. The witnesses signed. The judge stamped everything with official seals. And just like that, Cassandra Blake became Cassandra Kane. Moving in. Dominic's penthouse apartment occupied the entire top floor of the Pinnacle Tower, one of the most exclusive residential buildings in the city. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered breathtaking views of the skyline. The interior was all clean lines and modern elegance, decorated in shades of gray, white, and black with occasional pops of deep blue. Everything looked expensive and carefully chosen. "The master bedroom is through there," Dominic said, pointing down a hallway. "There are 3 guest bedrooms on the opposite side of the apartment. You can choose whichever one you prefer for yourself." "We are not sharing a room?" Cassie asked, surprised despite everything that had happened today. Dominic loosened his tie and poured himself a drink from a crystal decanter. "This is a business arrangement, remember? I meant what I said about keeping things professional. We will share space when we need to make public appearances, but your private life is your own." There was something both relieving and oddly disappointing about that statement. Cassie pushed the feeling aside. "That is very considerate. Thank you. However," Dominic continued, "we do need to get our story straight before we go public. The press will have questions. Society gossips will be brutal. We need a narrative that makes sense." They spent the next hour crafting their cover story. They had met at a charity gala 6 months ago and felt an instant connection. They had been conducting a secret romance, careful to keep it hidden from Trevor, who would have been furious. When Cassie discovered Trevor's betrayal this morning, she ran to Dominic, and they decided not to waste any more time. It was love, pure and simple, too powerful to deny any longer. "Do you think people will believe it?" Cassie asked doubtfully. "People believe what they want to believe," Dominic replied. "And a secret romance between enemies makes a much better story than the truth. Besides, after we are seen together a few times, looking happy and in love, the doubters will quiet down. Humans are remarkably willing to accept what is right in front of their eyes." That evening, Dominic suggested they get dinner at Marcello's, one of the most popular restaurants among their social circle. It was the kind of place where you went to see and be seen. Cassie's stomach twisted with nerves, but she agreed. There was no point in hiding. They might as well control the narrative from the start. She borrowed a dress from Dominic's sister, who apparently kept clothes at his apartment for emergencies. It was a simple black cocktail dress that fit perfectly and made Cassie feel sophisticated in a way her usual style did not. She did her makeup carefully, making sure to hide the puffiness around her eyes from earlier crying. When she looked in the mirror, she barely recognized herself. The public debut. Marcello's was packed, as always. The moment Cassie and Dominic walked in together, a hush fell over the nearest tables. Cassie could feel dozens of eyes on them, could hear the whispers starting immediately. She lifted her chin and kept her expression calm, channeling every bit of confidence she could muster. The hostess, clearly flustered by the unexpected celebrity of her guests, seated them at a prominent table near the center of the restaurant. Perfect, Cassie thought. Everyone could get a good look. "You are doing great," Dominic murmured as he held her chair. "Just remember, we are wildly in love. Nothing else matters." They ordered wine and appetizers, making conversation that looked intimate to anyone watching. Dominic leaned across the table at intervals, saying things that made Cassie laugh genuinely. He was surprisingly funny when he wanted to be, with a dry wit that caught her off guard. She found herself relaxing slightly despite the circumstances. Then Trevor walked in with Natalie on his arm. Cassie's breath caught. Trevor looked haggard, his usually perfect hair disheveled, his tie askew. Natalie appeared to have been crying, her eyes red and swollen. They were clearly not supposed to be here, had probably come looking for Cassie, hoping to explain or apologize or whatever they thought they could possibly say to make this better. Trevor's eyes swept the restaurant and locked onto their table. His face went through a rapid series of expressions. Shock, disbelief, fury, and finally something that might have been devastation. He started walking toward them, Natalie following reluctantly behind. "Here we go," Dominic said quietly. "Remember the plan. We are happy. We are in love. Nothing he says matters." Trevor reached their table, his hands clenched into fists at his sides. "What the hell is this, Cassie?" His voice was too loud, drawing even more attention. "You disappeared from the hotel, and now I find you here with him? With Dominic Kane?" "Hello, Trevor," Cassie said calmly, proud that her voice did not shake. "I think my actions today made my feelings quite clear." "Your feelings?" Trevor's voice rose another notch. "You left me at the altar. You humiliated me in front of 200 people. My mother had to tell the guests the wedding was cancelled. Do you have any idea what you have done? Do I know what I have done?" Cassie stood up slowly, fury giving her strength. "Trevor, I found you in bed with Natalie. In our honeymoon suite. 2 hours before our wedding. And you are upset about being embarrassed?" Conversations at nearby tables stopped entirely. Everyone was openly staring now. Natalie made a small sound of distress and tried to pull Trevor away, but he shook her off. "That was a mistake," Trevor said desperately. "A stupid mistake. Cassie, please, we can fix this. Just come talk to me privately. Forget whatever nonsense Kane has been telling you. Dominic stood as well, positioning himself slightly in front of Cassie. I think the lady has made her choice clear, Ashford. Maybe you should leave before you embarrass yourself further. Stay out of this, Kane, Trevor snarled. This is between me and my fiancé. Actually, Cassie said, holding up her left hand where a simple gold band now rested, I am not your fiancé. I am Dominic's wife. We got married this afternoon. The silence that followed was absolute. Even the waitstaff had stopped moving to watch the drama unfold. Trevor's face went completely white, then flushed a deep red. His mouth opened and closed several times before he managed to speak. You married him? You married Dominic Kane? He looked between them as if waiting for someone to admit this was all an elaborate joke. You cannot be serious. You have known him for what, a day? This is insane. No more insane than planning to marry a cheater, Cassie replied. At least Dominic is honest about what this is. She regretted the words immediately. They revealed too much, suggested that this marriage was not based on genuine feeling. But she was too angry to care about maintaining the perfect facade. Trevor turned to Dominic with pure hatred in his eyes. You planned this. Somehow you knew about today and you used it to get to me. This is all just another one of your business schemes. Believe what you want, Dominic said coolly. But Cassie came to me. She chose me. Maybe if you had treated her with the respect she deserves, she would have chosen differently. Natalie finally found her voice, stepping forward with tears streaming down her face. Cassie, please. You have been my best friend since we were children. I know I made a terrible mistake, but do not throw your whole life away because you are angry. This marriage cannot possibly be real. Looking at Natalie hurt more than looking at Trevor. At least Trevor had only been in her life for 4 years. Natalie represented 2 decades of friendship, of shared secrets and late-night conversations and being there for each other through every major life event. That betrayal cut deeper than any romantic disappointment. You lost the right to give me advice the moment you slept with my fiancé, Cassie said quietly. We are done, Natalie. Do not contact me again. Dominic placed a hand on the small of Cassie's back, a gesture of support that felt surprisingly genuine. I think it is time for you both to leave. You are causing a scene. Trevor looked like he wanted to argue more, but the restaurant manager was approaching with security guards in tow. The spectacle had gone on long enough. With a final look of pure venom at Dominic, Trevor grabbed Natalie's arm and stormed out of the restaurant. The moment they were gone, Cassie's legs felt weak. She sat down heavily, her hands trembling. Dominic sat beside her, closer than before, and poured her a fresh glass of wine. You were magnificent, he said softly, so only she could hear. Truly. I could not have asked for a better performance. That was not a performance, Cassie admitted, drinking deeply. That was real anger. Real hurt. I know, Dominic said, and something in his voice made her look at him. For just a moment, the calculating businessman was gone, replaced by something almost like compassion. But you handled it with grace. Trevor is the one who looked like a fool tonight, not you. Unexpected connections. The days that followed were strange beyond description. Cassie moved her belongings from the apartment she had shared with Trevor into one of Dominic's guest rooms. He was surprisingly helpful during the process, hiring movers and making sure she did not have to face Trevor again. Her mother called repeatedly, confused and upset about the sudden marriage, but eventually accepted that Cassie was an adult making her own choices. Living with Dominic was easier than Cassie had expected. He kept regular business hours, leaving early and returning around 7 each evening. They fell into a comfortable routine of having dinner together, discussing their days like an actual married couple might. Dominic asked about her interior design work and offered helpful suggestions about potential clients. Cassie found herself looking forward to these evenings, to the intelligent conversation and occasional verbal sparring. On Friday evening, exactly 1 week after their courthouse wedding, Dominic mentioned that his family wanted to meet her. "My mother has been calling non-stop," he explained. "She is convinced I have lost my mind marrying someone so quickly." Which, to be fair, is not an unreasonable assumption. "What are they like?" Cassie asked nervously. "Your family?" "Loud," Dominic said with a slight smile. "Opinionated. Fiercely protective of each other. My mother will interrogate you. My brother Julian will try to determine if you are after my money. My sister will probably love you immediately because she has been begging me to settle down for years. Just be yourself." They respond well to honesty. The Kane family lived in a modest house in a middle-class neighborhood, nothing like the wealthy circles Cassie had moved in with Trevor. Dominic's mother, Patricia, answered the door wearing an apron covered in flour. She was a small woman with graying brown hair and sharp eyes that immediately reminded Cassie of her son. "So you are the girl who stole my boy's heart so quickly," Patricia said, looking Cassie up and down. Come in, come in. Dinner is almost ready." The house was warm and welcoming, filled with mismatched furniture and family photos covering every available surface. Julian, Dominic's younger brother, was setting the table. He greeted Cassie with friendly suspicion, clearly determined to protect his older brother. The sister, Grace, arrived moments later with her husband and 2 young children who immediately monopolized Dominic's attention. Over dinner, a delicious homemade lasagna, the family asked questions. Patricia wanted to know how they met, how Dominic had proposed, why they had rushed into marriage so quickly. Cassie stuck to the script they had prepared, but found herself embellishing it with small details that made it feel more real. The way Dominic's eyes had drawn her in. How safe she felt with him even though they barely knew each other. The certainty that some connections transcend logic. As she spoke, Cassie realized some of it was not entirely false. She did feel safe with Dominic. She was drawn to his intelligence and unexpected kindness. The connection between them, while born from unusual circumstances, was becoming real in ways she had not anticipated. After dinner, Patricia pulled Cassie aside while the men cleaned up. "Walk with me in the garden," she suggested. It was clearly not actually a suggestion. Outside, among Patricia's roses and tomato plants, the older woman studied Cassie in the fading daylight. "My son is not good at showing his feelings," Patricia said bluntly. "He has built walls around himself ever since he was young. When his father left us, Dominic decided emotion was weakness. He buried himself in work, in success, in proving he was better than the man who abandoned us." "Why are you telling me this?" Cassie asked gently. "Because I see how he looks at you," Patricia said. "And I see how you look at him. Whatever brought you two together, there is something real growing there. Do not let him sabotage it. He will try to keep you at a distance, to maintain control. Push back. Make him feel. He needs that more than he knows." Cassie felt tears prick her eyes. This kind woman had no idea their marriage was a business arrangement, that it had an expiration date. "What if I hurt him?" she whispered. "Then you hurt him," Patricia said practically. "Pain is part of life. But living behind walls is not living at all. Promise me you will try. Promise me you will be honest with him." "I promise," Cassie said, and meant it more than she expected to. That night, back at the penthouse, Cassie could not sleep. She kept thinking about Patricia's words, about the look in Dominic's eyes when he was with his family, about how different he seemed there compared to the calculating businessman he showed the world. Around midnight, she gave up on sleep and wandered into the living room. Dominic was there, standing by the windows overlooking the city, a glass of whiskey in his hand. "Could not sleep either?" he asked without turning around. "Too much on my mind," Cassie admitted, joining him at the window. The city lights sparkled below like a galaxy laid out for their viewing. Your family is wonderful. They liked you, Dominic said. My mother called after we left. She approves, which is rare. Usually she thinks anyone I date is not good enough or too shallow or after my money. What did she think of the women you dated before? That they were not good enough, too shallow, and after my money, Dominic said with a slight smile. She was usually right. They stood in comfortable silence for a moment, both looking out at the city. Then Cassie asked the question that had been bothering her all evening. Why did you really propose this arrangement? The truth this time, not the revenge story. Dominic was quiet for so long that Cassie thought he might not answer. Then he said, my father left when I was 8. Just walked out one day and never came back. He left my mother with 2 kids, no money, and a mountain of debt from his gambling. I watched her work 3 jobs to keep us fed. I watched her cry at night when she thought we were asleep. He took a drink, his jaw tight. I swore I would never be like him. I would never be weak. I would never let emotion control me or make me vulnerable. So I built my business, made my fortune, and kept everyone at arm's length. It worked perfectly until Trevor Ashford decided to try to destroy everything I had built. When I heard about your wedding, about the perfect society marriage to a man I knew was rotten inside, I saw an opportunity. Not just for revenge, but to prove something to myself. Prove what? Cassie asked softly. That I could have a marriage, a partnership, without the messy complications of actual feeling. That I could win at relationships the same way I win at business. By being smart, strategic, and in control. Cassie turned to face him fully. And how is that working out for you? Dominic finally looked at her, and the vulnerability in his eyes took her breath away. Not as well as I planned, he admitted. Turns out you are harder to keep at a distance than I anticipated. Good, Cassie said. She reached up and cupped his face with her hand. Your mother told me not to let you hide behind walls. So I am not going to. Cassie, he started, but she interrupted him. We have 10 more months on this contract, she said. 10 months of pretending to be married. But what if we stopped pretending? What if we used this time to figure out if this could be real? Dominic closed his eyes, leaning into her touch. What if we try and it does not work? What if I hurt you? What if you realize I am not capable of being what you need? What if we do not try and spend the rest of our lives wondering? Cassie countered. I am not asking for promises or guarantees. I am just asking for honesty. For a real chance. When Dominic opened his eyes again, something had shifted. The walls were not gone, but they had cracked. He leaned down slowly, giving her every chance to pull away, and kissed her. This kiss was nothing like their brief courthouse peck. It was deep, searching, full of question and answer and possibility. When they finally broke apart, both breathless, Dominic rested his forehead against hers. I have no idea how to do this, he admitted. How to be open, how to let someone in. Then we will figure it out together, Cassie said. He picked her up suddenly, making her gasp and laugh. I think we should start by breaking one of our rules, he said, carrying her toward his bedroom instead of her guest room. Which rule is that? Cassie asked, her heart racing. The one about keeping things professional, Dominic replied. I am feeling decidedly unprofessional right now. He laid her gently on his bed, looking down at her with an intensity that made her shiver. We can stop, he said seriously. At any point. Just say the word. But stopping was the last thing Cassie wanted. For weeks she had been drawn to this man, curious about the glimpses of warmth beneath his cold exterior. Now, finally, the walls were down. She pulled him down to her, answering with a kiss that left no doubt about what she wanted. Dominic made love to her slowly, carefully, with a tenderness that contradicted his ruthless business reputation. He took his time learning what made her gasp, what made her moan, treating her body like something precious that deserved patience and attention. When he discovered she was still a virgin despite her age, despite everything, he froze. "Trevor, never." He started, and she saw anger flash in his eyes. "He wanted to wait until marriage," Cassie explained, feeling vulnerable under his gaze. "Said I was too special to rush. I thought it meant he respected me. Turns out he was just getting it elsewhere." Dominic kissed her so fiercely it took her breath away. "His loss," he murmured against her lips. "I will make this good for you. I promise." And he did. He was patient and attentive, making sure she was comfortable, checking in with her constantly. When there was pain, he soothed it with kisses and gentle touches until it transformed into pleasure. By the time they finished, both of them tangled together and breathing hard, Cassie felt fundamentally changed. Not just physically, but emotionally. This had been everything she had hoped losing her virginity would be. Intimate, meaningful, with someone who cared about her pleasure as much as his own. "Are you okay?" Dominic asked, brushing sweat-dampened hair from her face. "More than okay," Cassie said honestly. "That was perfect." He pulled her close, her back against his chest, his arms wrapped around her protectively. "Stay," he said simply. "Not just tonight. Stay in here. Share my room. Share my bed. No more separate spaces." "What about the contract?" Cassie asked. "What about keeping things professional?" "To hell with the contract," Dominic said. "This stopped being professional the moment I met you, I just was not ready to admit it." Cassie smiled in the darkness. "Your mother was right about you." "My mother is annoyingly perceptive," Dominic agreed. "What did she say?" "That you would try to keep me at a distance. That I should not let you." "Good advice," Dominic said, his breath warm against her neck. "Though slightly embarrassing that my mother saw through me that easily." They fell asleep like that, wrapped around each other, and for the first time since her disastrous wedding day, Cassie felt genuinely hopeful about the future, building something real. The next few weeks passed in a blur of happiness that Cassie had not anticipated. True to his word, Dominic stopped maintaining emotional distance. They fell into an easy domesticity, sharing morning coffee while discussing the news, cooking dinner together on evenings when Dominic came home early, spending weekends exploring the city or simply lounging together at the penthouse. Monica Torres, a successful interior designer with her own firm, reached out to Cassie after hearing about her marriage to Dominic Kane. Monica explained that she was looking to expand her business and needed a talented partner. She had seen some of Cassie's design work and was impressed by her innovative use of space and color. "I do not want you to think I am offering this just because of your husband," Monica said during their first meeting at her studio. "I have been following your work since that boutique hotel project you did 2 years ago. You have real talent. I am just sorry it took your connection to Dominic for me to have the courage to approach you." The opportunity was everything Cassie had dreamed of. Real design work with creative freedom and a mentor who understood the industry. She threw herself into projects, finding that she loved the challenge of transforming spaces and solving design problems. Monica was demanding but fair, pushing Cassie to take risks and trust her instincts. One evening, Cassie came home excited about a new project, a complete redesign of a historic mansion that was being converted into a luxury boutique hotel. She found Dominic already home, which was unusual for a Tuesday. He was in the living room, staring at his laptop with an expression she could not quite read. "What is wrong?" she asked immediately, dropping her bag and going to him. Over the past weeks, she had learned to read his moods, to see past the controlled mask he showed the world. Something was bothering him. Dominic closed the laptop slowly. "I need to tell you something. Something I should have told you before we got married." Cassie's stomach dropped. "Okay," she said carefully, sitting beside him on the couch. I knew about Trevor and Natalie before your wedding day, Dominic said, the words coming out in a rush. I have had private investigators watching Trevor for months as part of the business rivalry between us. They documented the affair. They told me about the hotel, the timeline, everything. I knew you would find them that morning. The room seemed to tilt. Cassie stood up, needing space to process what she was hearing. You knew, she repeated numbly. You knew I would be devastated and you were just waiting at that bar for me to show up? Not exactly, Dominic said, standing as well. I did not know you would end up at the Sapphire Room specifically. But I knew the wedding would not happen. And yes, I positioned myself to be available if you needed an out. The marriage proposal was genuine, but the circumstances that led to it were partially manufactured by me. Cassie felt like she could not breathe. Why? She demanded. Why would you manipulate me like that? Because I wanted to hurt Trevor, Dominic admitted. Because I wanted revenge for what he did to my business, to my reputation. You were a perfect opportunity. His beautiful fiancée, destroyed and vulnerable. I saw a way to give us both what we wanted. What I wanted? Cassie's voice rose. You think I wanted to be a pawn in your business games? You think I wanted to be manipulated at the worst moment of my life? No, Dominic said, running his hands through his hair in frustration. That came out wrong. Cassie, please, just listen. I am listening, she said coldly. I am listening to you admit that our entire relationship is based on a lie. That you used my pain for your own purposes. That everything, from the moment we met, has been calculated and planned. That is not true, Dominic insisted. Maybe it started that way, but everything that has happened since has been real. My feelings for you are real. Cassie laughed bitterly. How am I supposed to believe that? How am I supposed to trust anything you say when you admit you were manipulating me from the beginning? She grabbed her purse and headed for the door. Dominic caught her arm gently. Where are you going? I do not know, Cassie said, pulling away. Somewhere I can think. Somewhere I can figure out if anything about the past month has been genuine or if I have just been playing a part in your revenge scheme. Cassie, please do not go. Let us talk about this. No, she said firmly. I need space, Dominic. I need time to process this without you here telling me what to think or feel. You took away my choice once. Do not do it again. She left before he could respond, taking nothing but her purse and phone. She walked for hours through the city streets, her mind spinning. Part of her wanted to be furious, to write off everything that had happened as manipulation. But another part, the part that had grown to know Dominic, recognized the genuine remorse in his confession. He had not needed to tell her. He could have kept the truth hidden forever. But he chose honesty, even knowing it might destroy what they had built. Cassie ended up at her mother's house around midnight. Margaret opened the door in her bathrobe, took one look at her daughter's face, and pulled her inside without questions. She made tea, wrapped Cassie in a blanket, and waited patiently for the story to come out. When Cassie finished explaining everything, Margaret was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, "Do you love him?" "I do not know," Cassie admitted. "I thought I did. But how can I love someone who lied to me from the start?" "People are complicated," Margaret said gently. "They make mistakes. They do questionable things for what seem like good reasons at the time. The question is not whether he was wrong at the beginning. The question is whether he is genuinely sorry now and whether you can forgive him." "He manipulated me at my lowest moment," Cassie said. "How do I forgive that?" "By deciding whether the man he has been for the past month is the real him or whether it was all an act," Margaret replied. "Has he treated you well? Has he supported your dreams? Has he made you happy?" Cassie thought about Dominic cheering when she got the partnership with Monica. She remembered him staying up late to help her with design proposals, offering suggestions but never taking over. She thought about the way he held her at night, the vulnerability he showed when they were alone, the gradual opening up of a man who had spent years building walls around his heart. "He has made me happy," Cassie admitted. "Really happy. Happier than I ever was with Trevor, which is saying something considering Trevor and I dated for 4 years." "Then maybe that is worth something," Margaret suggested. "Maybe the beginning does not define everything that came after." Cassie stayed at her mother's house that night, sleeping in her childhood bedroom, surrounded by memories of simpler times. In the morning, she woke to 17 missed calls and twice as many text messages from Dominic. She read through them, watching his progression from explanations to apologies to desperate pleas for her to at least let him know she was safe. The final message was from an hour ago. "I understand if you need time. Take as much as you need. But please know that what we have is real to me. The man I am with you is who I want to be. I am sorry for how this started. I would change it if I could. But I cannot regret it because it brought you into my life. Come home when you are ready. I will be waiting." Cassie stared at her phone for a long time. Then she got dressed and headed back to the penthouse. Trevor's last attempt. Dominic was pacing the living room when Cassie walked in. He looked terrible, still wearing yesterday's clothes, his hair disheveled, dark circles under his eyes. The moment he saw her, relief flooded his face. "You came back," he said, as if he had not quite believed she would. "I came back to talk," Cassie clarified, wanting to be clear about her intentions. "I am not saying everything is forgiven. But I am willing to listen to your side of things. Really listen, without walking out." They sat down at opposite ends of the couch, a physical distance that mirrored the emotional gap between them. Dominic took a deep breath and began talking. He explained how Trevor had stolen a major development deal from him 2 years ago using insider information obtained through corporate espionage. How Trevor had then spread rumors that Dominic's business practices were unethical, causing several investors to pull out of projects. How Trevor seemed to take joy in making Dominic's professional life difficult at every turn. "I became obsessed with finding a way to hurt him back," Dominic admitted. "Not through business, because he would always have his family money and connections to fall back on. I needed something more personal. When I learned about the affair with Natalie, I saw my opportunity. If I could take you away from him, publicly humiliate him the way he had humiliated me, it felt like justice. But I was not a business deal," Cassie said quietly. "I was a person. A person going through one of the worst experiences of her life." "I know," Dominic said, and there were tears in his eyes. "I know that now. At the time, I was so focused on revenge that I did not think about what it meant for you. You were a means to an end. But the moment I actually talked to you, listened to your story, saw the pain you were in, everything changed." He moved closer, not touching her but near enough that she could feel his warmth. "You were supposed to be a prop in my revenge plan. Instead, you became the most important person in my life. Every day I spent with you, I fell a little harder. The way you laugh at terrible jokes. The way you lose yourself in design work and forget to eat. The way you are kind to people even when they do not deserve it. You made me want to be better than the cold, calculating person I had become." "Why tell me now?" Cassie asked. "You could have kept this secret forever. I never would have known." "Because you deserve honesty," Dominic said simply. "Because what we have is too important to build on lies. And because I love you, Cassie. I am in love with you. Not as part of some plan or strategy, but genuinely, terrifyingly in love. And if we are going to have a real future, it has to be built on truth." The words hung in the air between them. Cassie felt her resolve cracking. She wanted to be angry, wanted to hold on to her righteous fury, but looking at Dominic's face, seeing the genuine remorse and vulnerability there, she found her anger fading. "I need time," she said finally. "I need time to figure out if I can trust you again. But I am not leaving." I am going to stay, and we are going to work through this together. Relief and hope flooded Dominic's expression. Whatever you need. Whatever it takes. I will prove to you that this is real. They spent the rest of the day talking through everything. Dominic answered every question Cassie had, no matter how uncomfortable. He showed her the investigator reports, the timeline of when he had learned about the affair, everything that proved he was telling the truth now even though he had lied by omission before. It was painful and difficult and exhausting, but by the end of it, Cassie felt like they had reached a new understanding. That night, Cassie chose to sleep in her own room. Not because she wanted to punish Dominic, but because she needed space to process everything. Dominic accepted this without complaint, kissing her forehead gently before retreating to his own room. The next morning, everything fell apart again when Trevor showed up at the penthouse unannounced. The doorman called up, sounding apologetic, explaining that Trevor had demanded to see Cassie and was refusing to leave the lobby. "Tell him I am not interested in talking to him," Cassie said immediately. But Trevor must have pushed past security because minutes later he was pounding on the apartment door. Dominic looked at Cassie, a question in his eyes. She nodded. Might as well get this confrontation over with. Trevor looked worse than he had at the restaurant weeks ago. His expensive suit was wrinkled, his face unshaven, his eyes bloodshot. He pushed past Dominic the moment the door opened, focusing entirely on Cassie. "Thank God," Trevor said. "Cassie, I need to talk to you. Alone." "Anything you have to say, you can say in front of my husband," Cassie replied coolly. Trevor flinched at the word husband. "Fine. I will say it here. Natalie is pregnant. She says it is mine. She wants me to marry her, to claim the baby publicly. But Cassie, I do not want that. I do not want her. I want you. I made a terrible mistake, and I will spend the rest of my life making it up to you if you will just give me another chance." Cassie could not believe what she was hearing. "You want me to come back to you? After everything? We were together for 4 years, Trevor said desperately. 4 years of history and love. You cannot throw that away for someone you barely know. This marriage to Kane, it is not real. I know about the contract. I know he offered you money and opportunities if you would marry him for a year. It is all fake, Cassie. But what we had was real." Cassie's blood ran cold. "How do you know about the contract?" Trevor had the decency to look slightly guilty. "I have connections at Kane Industries. People who owe me favors. It was not hard to find out the truth. You are being used, Cassie. Kane is manipulating you just like he manipulates everyone in business. He saw an opportunity to hurt me and he took it, using you as his weapon." Cassie looked at Dominic, who was standing very still, his hands clenched into fists. She thought about his confession yesterday, about how he had admitted to manipulating the situation. Trevor was saying the same thing, but hearing it from her ex-fiancé somehow made it less convincing. Because Trevor was trying to make her doubt herself, while Dominic had been trying to be honest. "You are right," Cassie said finally, and both men looked at her in surprise. This marriage did start as a business arrangement. Dominic was upfront about that from the beginning. He offered me a deal, and I took it. And you know what, Trevor? It was the best decision I ever made." She walked over to Dominic and took his hand, lacing their fingers together. "Because Dominic treats me like an equal. He supports my career instead of sabotaging it. He is honest about his feelings even when it makes him vulnerable. He has never once cheated on me, lied to me, or made me feel like I was not enough. So yes, maybe this started as revenge against you. But what it became is real love. The kind of love you never gave me." Trevor's face went through several emotions before settling on anger. "You will regret this," he said viciously. "When he gets bored of you, when the revenge is complete and he discards you like yesterday's trash, you will regret not coming back to me. I am offering you a fortune, Cassie. More money than Kane's little contract promised. A real life, not this fake marriage charade. Get out, Dominic said quietly, but there was steel in his voice. You have said your piece. Now leave before I have you removed. Cassie, Trevor tried one more time. You heard him, Cassie said firmly. Leave. And Trevor? Marry Natalie. Take responsibility for your child. Maybe try to be a better man than you were to me. But whatever you do, stay away from us. Trevor stared at her for another long moment, then turned and left, slamming the door behind him hard enough to rattle the frame. The moment he was gone, Cassie felt her knees go weak. Dominic caught her, holding her steady. You defended me, he said, sounding amazed. After everything I told you yesterday, after learning I had manipulated things, you still defended me. Because the man I have come to know over these weeks is not a manipulator, Cassie said. He is someone who made a mistake but owned up to it. Someone who is trying to be better. Someone I am falling in love with despite all the logical reasons I should not. Dominic kissed her then, deep and passionate and full of relief. I love you, he said against her lips. I am sorry for how this started. But I am not sorry it brought us together. I love you too, Cassie admitted. And I forgive you. It is going to take time to fully trust again, but I want to try. I want to see where this goes. The real beginning. 3 months later, Cassie stood in the newly renovated boutique hotel, her first major project with Monica Torres complete. The grand opening was tonight, and she felt a mixture of pride and nervousness. This was her design, her vision brought to life. Critics and potential clients would be judging her work, forming opinions that could make or break her career. Dominic found her standing in the lobby, staring up at the dramatic chandelier she had sourced from a craftsman in Italy. You did an amazing job, he said, slipping an arm around her waist. This place is stunning. You think so? Cassie asked, seeking reassurance even though she knew the work was good. What if people hate it? Impossible, Dominic said firmly. You are brilliant. Everyone is going to see that tonight. The grand opening was a huge success. Designers, architects, and business owners toured the space, praising the innovative use of classic elements in a modern setting. Monica beamed with pride, introducing Cassie to potential clients and making sure everyone knew that this was Cassie Kane's design vision. Cassie found herself surrounded by people wanting to discuss projects, exchange business cards, and set up meetings. Her calendar filled up with consultations. Several major developers expressed interest in working with her on upcoming properties. By the end of the night, her feet hurt from standing in heels and her face hurt from smiling, but she felt more fulfilled than she had in years. On the way home, she leaned against Dominic in the back of the car, exhausted but happy. Thank you, she said softly. For what? For believing in me. For supporting my work. For being patient while I figured out if I could trust you again. She looked up at him. For being exactly what I did not know I needed. Dominic kissed the top of her head. You saved me too, you know. I was turning into a bitter, lonely man who only cared about business and revenge. You reminded me there are more important things. Love. Connection. Building something real instead of destroying what others have built. When they got home, Dominic had a surprise waiting. The penthouse was filled with flowers, candles lit throughout the living room, and soft music playing from the sound system. On the coffee table sat a small gift box. What is this? Cassie asked, picking up the box carefully. Open it, Dominic said, looking nervous in a way she rarely saw. Inside was a new ring. Not the simple band from their quick courthouse ceremony, but a stunning diamond that caught the candlelight and threw rainbows across the walls. Dominic, Cassie breathed. Our first wedding was a business transaction, Dominic said, taking the ring from the box and getting down on one knee. This time, I want to do it right. Cassandra Cain, will you marry me again? Not because of revenge or contracts or any reason except that I love you more than I knew it was possible to love another person. Will you build a real life with me, with no expiration date and no ulterior motives? Tears streamed down Cassie's face. Yes, she said, laughing and crying at the same time. Yes, I will marry you. For real this time. Dominic slipped the ring onto her finger, then stood and kissed her deeply. I want to do it soon, he said. A real ceremony with your mother and my family. Nothing huge, just the people who matter. And I want vows that mean something. Promises we actually intend to keep. They planned the wedding for 2 months later, a small ceremony in the garden behind Patricia Cain's house. Margaret cried happy tears throughout the entire event. Julian served as Dominic's best man, and Gray stood up for Cassie since she had no bridesmaids she trusted anymore.